So today we are talking about 4-1, which is about order of operations. When I was in middle school, we learned order of operations with the saying, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." I still remember that today when I think about order of operations. Some of you may have learned PEMDAS. That's another way that has been taught. The way that I like to teach it is these 4 steps. So we have step 1, which is parentheses, step 2, exponents, step 3 is multiplication and division, left to right, and step 4 is add and subtract left to right. When we talk about parentheses, this first step, often called parentheses or represented with a P, is actually grouping symbols. So the grouping symbols that we have are generally parentheses and sometimes brackets that have these square corners rather than rounded edges. Other grouping symbols that you might see as you go on in algebra are maybe the top part of a division problem is considered a group and you have to solve that before you can move on. There are other ones as well you guys will see when you get into high school math. The second step is our exponents. So you have a base, you have an exponent. Those are the second things that you need to solve. Our third step is to multiply and divide left to right. And the left to right part is super important here. You're going to start out at the left of your problem, and I joke that you have like a multiplication or division sensor or detector, and you're going to start over here and you go beep, 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 beep. When you find either multiplication or division, you need to stop, you need to do that, and then you move on and keep looking for any multiplication or division. If you find some, you stop, you do it, and then you keep going to the right. Same thing for our last step. Our final step is just add and subtract left to right. So we're doing the same thing with our addition subtraction sensor or detector, and we're going to start here and go beep, 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 and stop when you find any addition or subtraction. Do that and then keep going to the right. If you find any more addition or subtraction, you're going to stop, do that, and then when you're done with the step 4, you're done with the problem. It should be complete and you're going to move on. The next thing that I want you to do is watch a little video just to remind those brain cells in the back of your head what you guys learned last year. I know Miss Weibel taught this really, really well, so hopefully it will bring a lot back to you.
Hi, and welcome to Math Antics. Today we're going to talk about an important math concept called order of operations. Order of operations is just a set of math rules that tell you which math operations, like addition or multiplication, to do first. Now you might be wondering, especially if you're a teenager, why do I need rules to tell me which operations to do first? Can't I just do them in any order I want? Well, that's a really good question. And to answer it, we're going to give 2 totally different people the same math problem to solve. The problem is 2 plus 5 times 4. I like addition better than multiplication, so I'm going to do that first. Let's see, 2 plus 5 gives us 7, and then I just multiply that 7 by the 4, and I get 28. That was easy, but you'd better not copy my answer. Don't worry, I'm not going to copy your answer because I want the right answer. And I prefer multiplying, so I'm going to do that first. Let's see, 4 times 5 equals 20, and then I'll add the 2, which gives me 22 for a final answer. What makes you think that's the right answer? All my calculations were correct. I even checked it with a calculator. The only calculator I need is right up here. And the correct answer is boop, 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 22. Okay, so which one of these guys do you think is right? Neither one made any mistakes with the calculations. They just did the operations in a different order and got different answers. Well, since there were no mistakes, in a way they were both right. But math would be a very confusing subject if there were different answers to the same problem. And that's where order of operations can help us out. The order of operations rules are a way for us all to agree on the order that you should do math operations in. And if we always do operations in the same order, then we'll always get the same answer. So now that you know why we need order of operations rules, let's find out what those rules are. There are basically 4 of them, and they go something like this. First, do operations in parentheses and brackets. Next, do exponents. Then, do multiplication and division. Last, do addition and subtraction. Let's take a closer look at each of these rules and see some examples where they help us. First on the list was do operations in parentheses and brackets. Now, in case you haven't seen parentheses or brackets used in math before, let me briefly explain how they work. Parentheses are just these symbols that curve forwards and backwards, and they're used in pairs like this. And when we put numbers and operators in between them, it forms a group. It's almost like the parentheses form a package to hold whatever math stuff we put inside them. And brackets work exactly the same way as parentheses. They just have a different shape that looks a little more boxy, but they mean exactly the same thing. So parentheses and brackets are used to group things together, and our rules tell us to do any operations inside these groups first. For example, have a look at this problem. 10 times 4 plus 5. It has 3 numbers and 2 operations, multiplication and addition. But 2 of the numbers and the addition symbol are inside parentheses. That means that they form a group, and we need to do that part of the problem first. 4 plus 5 equals 9. So the part inside the parentheses can just be replaced with the simplified value 9. Oh, and once you do the math that's inside parentheses and get a single number like this, you usually don't need to show the parentheses anymore. Now that the parentheses are gone, we just have one operation left to do. We multiply 10 times 9, and that gives us 90 as our final answer. So parentheses can really help you know what part of a problem you're supposed to do first. But what if you get a problem that has more than one set of parentheses, like this? 5 minus 3 plus 6 times 2. Fortunately, it doesn't matter which set of parentheses you do first. You just need to do everything that's inside the parentheses before you do anything that's not inside parentheses. In other words, we need to simplify both of our parentheses groups before we can do the addition in between them. The first group, 5 minus 3, simplifies to 2. And the second group, 6 times 2, simplifies to 12. Now we can do the last operation and add the values that we got from simplifying. 2 plus 12 equals 14. Okay, now that we know that we always do operations in parentheses or brackets first, let's take a closer look at the second rule that says the next thing we do is exponents. Now, if you haven't seen exponents before, they're just a way of writing repeated multiplication. For example, the repeated multiplication 4 times 4 can be written in a shorter form as 4 multiplied twice. And 4 times 4 times 4 can be written as 4 multiplied 3 times. And 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 can be written as 4 multiplied 4 times. Get the idea? This small number is called an exponent, or power. It just tells you how many times to multiply the bigger number together. So after we take care of any parentheses, simplifying any exponents becomes the next highest priority. For example, in this problem, we have to simplify the exponent before we can do the other multiplication. The exponent is telling us to multiply 5 together twice. So 5 times 5 is 25. And after we do that, then we multiply the result by 3. So 25 times 3 is 75. Oh, and one thing I should point out. Sometimes you'll get a problem that has exponents inside of parentheses, like this problem. And you may wonder, how can I get rid of the parentheses before I do the exponents? You might think that if you simplify the exponent first, you're breaking the rules. But the truth is that by doing whatever operations are inside the parentheses, you are doing the parentheses first. The parentheses really just tell you where to start. So in this problem, first we do 3 to the power of 2, which means 3 times 3, which is 9. Then the part inside the parentheses is 9 times 4, which equals 36. And once the parentheses are gone, we add 36 plus 6 and get 42 as our final answer. All right, now we're going to look at the last 2 rules together. These 2 rules are really important because they deal with the most common math operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And the rules tell us that we need to do multiplication and division before we do addition and subtraction. To see how these rules work, let's look at a few quick examples that use those basic operations. First, let's try this one. 2 plus 5 times 4. Aha! Does this look familiar? Yep, it's the one we gave to my two friends earlier. And now that we have our rules, we see that we have to do the multiplication before the addition. 5 times 4 equals 20, and then we add the 2, which gives us 22. So the second guy was right. What a surprise! Now let's try this one. 3 times 5 minus 1. Our rules tell us that multiplication is higher on the list than subtraction, so we do 3 times 5 first. And that gives us 15, and then we subtract the 1, which leaves 14 as our final answer. Here's one with division and subtraction. 20 minus 10 divided by 5. And since division has a higher priority, we do the 10 divided by 5 first, which equals 2. And then we subtract 2 from 20 and get 18 as our final answer. And here's another problem. 12 divided by 6 plus 5. Again, our rules say to do the division before addition. So 12 divided by 6 equals 2, and then we add the 5 to get 7. And here's one last problem. 40 divided by 4 times 5. Which do we do first, the multiplication or division? Our rules don't tell us. Well, that's because multiplication and division are tied for priority or importance. So are addition and subtraction. And that's the reason we need an extra part at the end of each of these rules that says from left to right. If you have a problem that has both multiplication and division, then you're supposed to work it from left to right. That's because in some cases, you can get a different answer if you go from right to left. For example, in this problem, if you work from right to left the wrong way, you would do the 4 times 5 first and get 20. And then 40 divided by 20 equals 2. But if you go from left to right, you would do 40 divided by 4 first, which is 10. And then 10 times 5 equals 50. Wow, the direction we went made a big difference. So whenever you have a problem that has a mixture of multiplication and division, or a mixture of addition and subtraction, you know to do the operations in order from left to right. All right, we're just about done, but let's have one more look at all 4 of our rules before you start practicing with the exercises. The order of operations rules say, first, do operations in parentheses and brackets. Next, do exponents. Then, do multiplication and division from left to right. Last, do addition and subtraction from left to right. All right, that does it for this video. Good luck with the exercises, and I'll see you next time.
We have our first 3 examples up here. Notice I put over on the side here are 4 steps for order of operations. I would like you to have that on your paper somewhere easy for you to reference while you're doing the problems. First step would be parentheses or grouping symbols, then exponents, then multiply and divide left to right, and then add and subtract left to right. So those are our symbols. I'm not sure why. It's a reflection from my light in my room, but regardless, those are our 4 steps for order of operations. And now we're going to go ahead and try some problems. With problem 1, we have no parentheses, we have no exponents. So the first thing that we're going to do is this multiplication here. When you are on the 3rd step, multiply and divide left to right, you're going to start over on the left, go until you find a multiplication or a division, and then you're going to do that. So 3 times 9 is 27. You bring everything else down. And in this section in your book, the directions said, tell which operation is to be done first and then compute. When you are doing that, you could underline the part that you're going to do and then do it, and then again underline what you're going to do. We only have one thing left, which is to add, and we will get 35 for our answer there. So to show which operation is going to be done, you can underline it, showing that you've done it. Some people, once they've done it, they like to cross that part out so that they know it's done. And then we would cross this out, and then we have 35 left. So a little bit of that is up to you. at least for these first few, I want you to show me by underlining what you're working on for that step, and then you're going to write below to show me what you got, copy everything else that you still need down, and then keep working. For number 3, we have no parentheses, we have no exponents, so we're looking left to right to find multiplication or division. We find it right there. 6 divided by 3 would be 2. We have to copy this down, and then we have one step left, which is 15 minus 2, so our answer here would be 13. Notice I'm circling my answers. With number 5, we do have some grouping symbols. Even though there aren't parentheses in our problem, this division bar actually groups this 9 plus 11 together. So although we have no grouping symbols, we have no exponents, we need to multiply or divide first. This is a division, and we can't actually do this division problem until we first do this addition on top. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. And when we do that, we get 20 divided by 10. So that's the next thing that we're going to do. And then finally, we would do the subtraction and, sorry about that, and get our answer of 19. 7 through 11 here. Number 7, we need to complete the part in the parentheses first. So this time we do have parentheses as our grouping symbols. We're going to divide, copy everything down. Next, we have an exponent. So we'd have 6 times 6, which is 36. Finally, we're going to add 7 plus 36, which would be 43. And that is our answer for number 7. Next up, we have number 9. Here we start out with our grouping symbols. We're going to do what's in there, which in this case is just 8 times 8. So we get 64 divided by 64, which would be 1. That would be our answer to number 9. Number 11 has a different set of directions. Number 11, the directions are use the order of operations to compute and justify each step in the process. By justify, I really just want you underlining what you're working on. So for this one, let me move this down. For this one, we have no parentheses, we have no exponents, so we start on the left and we are going to multiply or divide left to right. So we start that off and then we're going to divide here, and finally we get 0 for our answer. So the 2 problems we are going to think through. Don't get overwhelmed that there's a lot in each of these problems. Just use your order of operations. Go step by step down the order of operations. So our first step is always parentheses. We actually have 2 sets of parentheses, and we can go ahead and figure out what this set is and figure out what this set is in this first step. So once we do that, we would have 5 plus 32 divided by 8 plus 3 7/10. And you don't need either set of parentheses anymore. Sometimes there'll be multiple steps within your parentheses, like in this problem. So we need to solve everything in here before we can move on. But in this case, we just had one step in these parentheses and one step in these parentheses. So now we can move on. We have no more parentheses. We have no exponents. We can go ahead and do this division. And that would give us 5 plus 4 plus 3 7/10. Now we have addition the whole way across. So I'm going to add here and then finally add here. And we get 12 7/10 for number 15. Number 19 is the next one I wanted to do for you. It's got a lot going on in these parentheses. So we're going to deal with the parentheses first. Within those parentheses, you have to then think, are there any other parentheses? There aren't, but there is another grouping symbol, which is the division bar. We're going to need to solve what's on top and what's on bottom before we can move on. So the first thing we'll do is 1 times 7 on the top. On the bottom, we can go ahead and figure out what these exponents represent. So 3 squared would be 3 times 3, which is 9. And we're minusing 2 cubed, which would be 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. We're still working on those parentheses because we need to come in here and we need to do 9 minus 8 next, which is 1. Still working there. We have a division, 24 plus 7 minus 6. Still working in the parentheses. Now we have addition and subtraction in here. That's all we have left. So we can add 24 plus 7, which would be 31. And then we're subtracting 6 more, so we'd have 25. 5 squared means 5 times 5, which is 25. And finally, 25 divided by 25 is 1. And all of this original problem here, simplified down to a 1 for our answer. So when we work through these order of operations, you need to stay calm, remember your order of operations, remember to go step by step. Within the parentheses or grouping symbols, you also need to kind of repeat the order of operations and work through those within the grouping symbols. So in this case, for 19, we had these parentheses, so we started there. But there was a lot more we had to do to get those parentheses down to what they were equal to, which is 25 down here. So when you get in the parentheses, you start the order of operations again. Are there any more grouping symbols? Yes, we had to take care of these. And then there were exponents we had to take care of. And then some division we had to take care of. And then finally, addition and subtraction left to right. So break it down, go step by step. I highly recommend underlining the step that you're currently working on. Some of you will probably like to cross those sections out once you deal with them, which is perfectly fine. If you want to do that, you can. You don't have to. There's one other section here. This one, some of you are going to like, and some of you will find this to be a really big challenge. What happens is you are given a problem, an expression. Actually, you're given an equation because there's an equal sign. So say, let's do number 21. We are given 5 times 10 squared divided by 41 minus 4 squared, and that's equal to 20. So our job on these is to figure out where the parentheses go. So somewhere in this expression on the left side of our equation, somewhere there should be parentheses. Some of them, actually they all just have one set of parentheses. So we're trying to figure out, where do the parentheses belong? Where do the parentheses belong so that this expression equals 20? The thing you need to think about is, of course, order of operations, because that's what section we're in. But we really need to think about what needs to be grouped together so that I'm going to end up with 20. So the way I like to think about it is, okay, if I just did this straight across, what would happen? So if I ignore my order of operations and I just completely work left to right, what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to get 5 times 10 squared. 10 squared is 100. So 5 times 100 would be 500. And then I'm going to divide that by 41. That doesn't sound quite right. That wouldn't give me a whole number for my answer. Over here I have a whole number. So something isn't quite right there. So let's think about, well, what if we did just this first? So we do 10 squared divided by 41. Again, we're not getting a whole number. We have a whole number over here, so something's probably not right there. So then, how about if I take this 41 and I subtract 4 squared, which would be 16? Is that going to work any better? So if I had 41 minus 16, I would get 25. That sounds better because that's going to give me a whole number. So let's do this. And you're going to have to guess and check on these. So I'm going to go ahead and start checking here. First I did my exponent. Now I'm going to finish up what's inside my parentheses. And next I have to do this exponent next. Don't need these parentheses anymore because there's just a number in there. Now I'm doing multiplication and division left to right. And hey, check that out. We got a true statement at the bottom, 20 equals 20. That means I did put these parentheses in the right place. And that is what I want you to do for these. I'm going to give you a couple. I want you to try to think it through. Figure out where those parentheses are going to need to go. You're probably going to need to guess and check. Make sure in all of them you should end up with a whole number. So if there's any division that ends up with a decimal, that's probably not right. Try putting your parentheses somewhere else and see what happens. What I would like you to do is page 123, and we're working on the evens here. So what I want you to do is go ahead and try 2 to 22 even. And in our Zoom on Friday, we'll probably go ahead and do a couple more of those just to see how we're doing on section 4.1. So assignment is page 123, 2 to 22 even. That will be due on Monday. If you have any questions on it though, you can ask them during our Zoom on Friday, or you can post them to your class's discussion board. One more thing I want to share with you guys, which is just a quick order of operations song. It's kind of fun.
Parentheses first, exponents next, multiplication and division in the same step. Addition and subtraction, if you got the nerve, from left to right, first come, first serve. Parentheses first, 2 times 4, the product's 8. Are you ready for more? Exponents next, 2 squared is 4. Let's move down like we did before. Time to divide or multiply. Let's see what we got. Take a look at the signs. Divide the 8 by the 2. The quotient's 4 and we're almost through. It's finally time to add or subtract. 8's the answer and that's a fact.
Write it down.
Parentheses first, exponents next, multiplication and division in the same step. Addition and subtraction, if you got the nerve, from left to right, first come, first serve.
2.
Parentheses first, 2 times 6, the product's 12. Put it back in the mix. Exponents next, 3 squared is 9. When you know the tricks, it don't take much time. Now we divide or multiply. Let's see what we got. Take a look at the signs. 9 divided by 9 is 1. The answer's close, man. We're almost done. 4 minus 1 has a difference of 3. When we add the 12, we get 15.
Parentheses first, exponents next. Multiplication and division in the same step. Addition and subtraction, if you got the nerve. From left to right, first come, first serve.